Welcome to the HOPWA Training Addendum. Prior to taking this course, you should have viewed the HMIS Introductory Series and the Case Management Series. This HOPWA training will only cover information that is unique to HOPWA, not the entire workflow in detail. If you have any questions about the basic workflows, you'll have to refer to the Introductory and Case Management trainings already available. Let's begin. So we're currently on the home page, and before we continue, we'll want to make sure we're in the correct Enter Data As and Backdate modes. So I'll click Enter Data As. I'll jump into my HOPWA training project. We'll also jump into backdate mode, and I'll backdate a few months just to make sure that we have some time or some days to add some interim reviews. So I'll set backdate, and we're now have a yellow bar. And so now we're going to go and add an entry exit for our client under our HOPWA project. So I'll go to client point, and I'll find my client, which I happen to know their client ID number, which is 2. I'll click submit, and here's our profile. Now I'm going to jump to the entry exit tab. You want to make sure that your households are complete if you do have a household. In this scenario, I don't have a household, so I'll check this, and then I'll go ahead and move to the entry exit tab. Now it looks like my client does have a previous project, and you can see which days they were in the project as well as the project name. I want to add a project entry for my HOPWA training program specifically, so I'll click Add Entry Exit, and I'll select HUD for the type. The provider and the project start dates should both be correct automatically. If you have to make changes, you'll just have to back out of the screen and make sure you're in the correct Enter Data As or Backdate mode. So let's click Save and Continue. Alright, so the first tab we'll see is the Universal Data Elements, and it's best to work from left to right when doing these assessments. Now, your agency may have a slightly different layout in terms of what their assessments look like, and they may have different names for their assessments as well. If this is the case, all the elements should be present, they'll just be located in slightly different areas. You can definitely refer to your agency for assistance and how to best go through the assessments. So we'll start with the universal data elements, and anytime a client enters your project for the first time, you'll always want to check to make sure the universal data elements are correct. So even though they're pre-filled out, we'll still make sure that they're correct. In our case, we're going to make sure that we flip the does the client have a disabling condition to yes if the client is diagnosed with HIV/AIDS, because for HUD, the disabling condition does include having HIV/AIDS. Additionally, another thing to mention is that the housing move-in date, we'll want to make sure that if there is a previous housing move-in date, which we do have here, to clear that out every single time we see it when we're entering a new client into our project for the first time. Now, if the client was moving into housing today, you would go and fill out the current date. Otherwise, you leave this blank until the client does move into housing and you need to update it appropriately when they move in. So we'll click Save after we make sure that all of our information has been updated. And then we'll move on to the program data elements. Just like the universal data elements, we'll want to make sure that our program data elements are accurate and current. So you want to go ahead and double check your client to see what type of monthly income as well as the type of monthly income types that they have. We'll go and continue here. We'll continue down. And these have been pre-filled out for this training. So one thing that has not been pre-filled out is the covered by health insurance, because there is an additional step for HOPWA programs that other projects do not have to complete. So I'm going to flip this to yes, and click on the HUD verification link. So you'll have to go ahead and select every single one to indicate a no, but when you select no for any particular project, you'll get a pop-up asking specifically if the client does not have health insurance for that type, why don't they have health insurance for that type? So I said this client does not have Medicare, so I have to indicate why they do not have Medicare, and you have to select the most appropriate option. Now you'll have to do this for every single option here, so let's go through these one by one. And like I said, you just want to pick the most appropriate option from the drop down, but anytime a client does not have the health insurance type, you want to make sure that you answer the bottom question. If no, the reason they're not covered by the health insurance type. Alright, and once we're done there, we'll complete that. And once we're done with all those options there, we'll click Save and Exit. Perfect. We'll also go to disabilities, and I'll complete the HUD verification here as well, because we want to make sure that if our client does have HIV/AIDS, that we want to indicate that they do have HIV/AIDS under the disabilities sub-assessment. So, and then these two questions should always be the same, but they'll always be yes for this case. So we'll click Save, Save and Exit, and the rest of the information had already been completed as well. So we'll save this. And so it's always a matter of every time entering a client, even if you're doing updates or a new client to your system, even if they have previous elements, you want to double check the universal data elements, double check the program data elements, reconfirm any data is there, or enter any new data for the first time. So now we're going to jump to the HOPWA program data elements, which is labeled HOPWA program elements. So this pulls up a series of questions that are specific to HOPWA programs. You'll want to pay attention to the headers because they'll tell you exactly when to make the updates. So these questions here, you want to complete every time there's an update. This includes the entry, updates, interim reviews, annual assessments, and exits. The first thing we'll see is the HIV/AIDS sub-assessment. Now, the HIV/AIDS sub-assessment doesn't have to be completed for every single update. We recommend it be updated every 6 months. At the very least, it should be updated at the annual assessment every year. But please strive to make sure this is updated every 6 months. But to add this sub-assessment, we'll click Add, and you'll simply fill out the questions asking about the client's health information. So first we have, if yes for HIV/AIDS, does the client have a T cell count available? And then you answer the dependent question depending on what the count is. You'd also answer whether, if they do have something, in terms of what count their T cell count was, you want to make sure to indicate where that information was coming from. In this case, my client doesn't have information, so I'll leave this question blank. They'll also ask about viral load information. So we'll say it's available. And then we'll enter the number that's appropriate, that's in the report. And then since we entered a number, we'll have to select how this information was obtained. And we'll say that was from the client report in this case. So this sub-assessment is pretty simple. We'll click Save, and you'll see a row of our sub-assessment come here. Now, in the future, to do an update, you would simply click Add again, and you would do that sub-assessment once again. These questions should be updated the first time the client enters a project, as well as any time there is any changes in this information. So, is the client receiving public HIV/AIDS medical assistance? Yes or no? And if they're not receiving assistance, you'd indicate why. In this case, they are, so I won't answer that question. You'll also answer receiving AIDS drug assistance program. I'll say no here, and since they're not, I'll have to answer the dependent question asking why they're not receiving it. Remember, these questions should be updated every single time there's an actual change. Now these final questions are to be completed only at the exit, so we'll simply click Save. At this point, if your agency did have a custom assessment, you would complete that custom assessment. We'll hold off on that custom assessment for our own personal purposes, as we don't have one for our particular agency. So once you're complete, you'll click Save and Exit, and you'll have your client's HOPWA training program listed in the Entry Exit tab. Now, I'm going to go ahead and change my back date to something different. I'm going to do an interim update for my client. So, we're now on 12:05 in backdate mode, and where it's a month later, we're going to do an update for our client. So we'll simply click on Interim Updates. We'll click on Add Interim Review. I'll do an update in this case. And so the same workflow is just want to go ahead and reconfirm all the information. So universal data elements, all the top elements, once you've reconfirmed the first time, should be okay. But the bottom here, we're going to say our client has moved into housing as of today. So you want to make sure that when your client does move into housing, that you update this field down here and update it to the correct date when they moved into their housing unit. So click Save. We'll go to the program data elements as well. And once again, we'll always want to make sure that if there's any changes in monthly income and non-cash benefits, health insurance status, as well as disabilities, that we go and update all that information. We also want to update any domestic violence victim survivor information as well. Then we'll go to the next assessment, the HOPWA program elements. As it's not 6 months from the original assessment, we'll leave this one alone for now. And we're going to say there's been no changes here, but we'll want to reconfirm. And since there's no changes, we'll leave it blank here. And these ones are just for the exit only. So we'll click Save. And we'll click Save and Exit. Exit here. We'll see an interim update right there. And basically we have an indication that our client has moved into housing, is what we did with this interim update. Now, there's also required fields for HOPWA programs than with service transactions. So we'll jump to service transactions, and we're going to add a service. Now, we'll start by adding a service of case management. This is a normal process, so if you have any questions about the normal process, refer to the case management series. We'll click Save and Continue. So the one difference for HOPWA programs is they have additional questions regarding HOPWA. Now, there's 3 questions here, but they're in 2 sets. So the first set of questions, or the first question is this, and the second set of questions are these. You'll only complete one set, one or the other, not all 3 at the same time. So in this case, I'm saying I have a type of HOPWA service, and I'm going to indicate that we provide a case management to our client. Since I filled out this top field, I'll leave the bottom 2 fields blank, and I will not complete those. If applicable, I'll complete service costs, funding, and support documentation. But for HOPWA services, we'll just simply go ahead and complete the need status is closed and fully met, and we'll save and exit. So we'll also add another service. So once again, we'll add a service. In this case, we're going to add substance abuse disorder services. So once again, the only difference for HOPWA programs is that these fields had to be completed as well. Now, in this case, I'm not going to complete the type of HOPWA service, I'm going to complete the HOPWA financial assistance type. And I'm going to say that they also receive security deposits and the amount of $250. And for HOPWA projects, when you are completing a financial assistance type, you will not complete the top field here for type of HOPWA service. You're going to complete HOPWA service or financial assistance type. Additionally, when completing a financial assistance type, you'll want to add a funding source. You'll simply click the Add Funding Source button, and you'll see the list of programs that may be funding the particular payment. So we'll click that. We'll indicate how much the source was for, and we'll click Calculate, and it'll indicate how much the service is for. Want to make sure anytime you do in a financial assistance type that you add the funding source as well. Finally, we'll go down and complete the need information as closed and fully met. And we'll save and exit. So with completing services, the real important thing to remember is to complete the HOPWA specific fields, because these are very important for tracking data and for tracking exactly how the HOPWA programs are serving their clients. So let's jump back to the client information. Let's jump out of backdate as well. And now we're just going to review how to exit your client from the program. So to exit the client, we'll simply click the pencil icon next to the exit date. And we'll select why the person was leaving. We'll click Save and Continue. Right. And once again, you see all the normal elements. The first assessment is universal data elements, program data elements, so you'll want to go and double check all this information. You'll make sure that the housing move date is correct. You'll make sure that if there's any final updates regarding income, non-cash benefits, and so forth, you'll want to make those updates. For HOPWA program elements, You'll also want to make sure that this information is also up to date, especially if the client is leaving the program. They want to make sure to add a new assessment here, and it'll complete the appropriate data. Let's see here, not available, and we'll click save. And once again, you'll see that those have multiple assessments. We also reconfirm these. So we're going to say our client on exit has in fact received this, so we'll correct these answers accordingly. And finally, we'll complete the exit questions specific to HOPWA. So housing assessment at exit simply indicate what type of housing situation that they are in. And we'll say they're moved to a new housing unit. And if they're able to maintain housing at entry, you'd indicate the subsidy information. And if they move to new housing, you'd also indicate the subsidy information. We'll click save here. And then we'd finally complete any custom assessments that your agency may have. And finally, you'd complete the universal exit assessment. So these are the same as the program data elements. So you can update this information either on the universal exit assessment or the program data elements assessment. In your case, we'll want to make sure that these fields are updated. And once they are, you'll simply click save and exit. Perfect. Now we have a complete HOPWA training project. We have a start date and end date, as well as our interim updates. That covers the HOPWA training programs and the items unique to HOPWA. Please and that covers the training for HOPWA. Thank you for your time and have a wonderful rest of your day.